Aloha, I'm Diane Wilson from the Hawaii Writers Guild. Welcome to Write On, a series of videos with education, information, and inspiration for all of you writers out there. Our guest today is Donald J. Bingle. Donald is the author of 6, soon to be 7 novels and more than 60 shorter works, as well as being an anthology editor. His books include the Dick Thornby spy thriller series, Net Impact, Wet Work, and Flash Drive, as well as Frame Shop, a mystery thriller set in a suburban writers group. He's run 3 Kickstarter crowdfundings of his own and participated as a story author in a number of others. More on Don and his writing can be found at donaldjbingle.com. Today we're focusing on self-publishing and marketing your self-published piece. Don, can you start by giving us a ballpark figure of how much it costs to self-publish?
Well, it literally costs nothing to self-publish. You can go to Amazon and you can upload your content. They will help you create a cover for free, and you can press the button and become self-published on Amazon at absolutely no cost. I would say that if you want to do a good job of self-publishing, there are a few things that you should spend some money on. One of those is a cover, which you can get a very nice cover for anywhere from $75 to several hundred, although some people spend as much as $1,000 or commission original art or something. And you should spend money on an editor. You should not get your editor as your best friend or off of the cheapest service you can find or by asking online about it. You should find an editor by looking at books in your genre by authors that are similarly situated, see who their, see if who their editor is, and if you like how that book is edited. Because if the book has a bunch of typos and the format is bad, you don't want to use that editor. You want to get a good editor. But you can get a 80 to 110,000 word book edited for $100 to $500 by very, very competent editors. And the thing to remember about self-publishing is you may want to pay for specific services, but you never want to have to pay a publishing house. They'll say, oh, give us $5,000 or whatever, and we'll edit your book and we'll give you a cover and we'll put it on Amazon for you. You do not pay publishers. Publishers pay you. And if you are dealing with any publisher or any agent that says, send me money, that is somebody you do not want to deal with. You want to find a reputable publisher instead, or you want to self-publish yourself and pay for a couple services on your own.
Okay, good advice. So there are some services, as you mentioned, that we need to pay for. You have used crowdfunding campaigns to help fund your publications. For those who might not know, what is crowdfunding?
Well, crowdfunding is something that occurs on the internet where you can say that you've got a product that you want to create and talk about that product, and then people can back that project. And if you raise a certain number of backers or a certain amount of money from backers, then they're all charged the money and you are given that money to go out and create that product. Now, probably 6 or 8 years ago, I did a blog that said, I don't know why authors use Kickstarter and crowdfunding, because there are no costs really to fund. You've got a pencil, you've got a piece of paper, you've got a, something that you can type on. You're not creating tools and dies. You're not renting recording studio time. You're not getting game components made in China and shipped overseas. What do you need Kickstarter for? And I think the answer is that as far as publishing goes on Kickstarter, publishing novels and publishing anthologies, Kickstarter is not really so much to raise the money that you need to pay for the tools to create the project. It is a marketing platform. And so most of the publishing, successful publishing platforms are really not for things that haven't been written, because who's going to pay for a book that hasn't been written yet? And they're not for, oh, you can, go off and commission art for a cover. They're really for projects that are already written, a cover's already been created, and you're using it as a means of marketing your book. Because let's face it, when you self-publish, nobody's giving you that advance. And advances from publishers are pretty mediocre or small these days, especially for genre fiction, thrillers and mysteries and romances and sci-fi and fantasy. You're not going to get a big advance from even a traditional publisher for those kinds of books if you're not an established name. But you can, through Kickstarter, raise 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 or maybe more from your social network and from people who will pay attention to Kickstarters and kind of follow them and fund the projects that they think are worthy. And so you go to crowdfunding like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. There's also GoFundMe, but I recommend against it. It's full of a lot of charitable scams and things like that. Kickstarter is the gold standard for crowdfunding.
So is Kickstarter the platform that you used, or have you used multiple?
I have used only Kickstarter. I've been an author in a bunch of anthologies that have done different kinds of crowdfunding. I think one of those or two of those may have used Indiegogo, which is the big difference between Kickstarter and Indiegogo is Kickstarter has make your goal or nobody gets charged a dime and the thing is unsuccessful. Indiegogo will, I believe, last I looked, let you have no minimum in terms of how much money you raise. But quite frankly, Kickstarter is better known. And the more successful projects tend to go there. Now they'll charge a fee, a percentage, 10% basically of what you raise goes to Kickstarter. And they're going to use a credit card payment plan. And so you're going to pay for the credit card fees also through them. So you can figure you're going to lose about 15% of whatever you raise in fees for Kickstarter. But if your Kickstarter is successful, you get the money and then you send out the book or books or other items that you may have promised in your Kickstarter to your subscribers, either yourself, which is what I've done, or by using a service that performs the back end for you in terms of the logistics of sending out books and sending out ebooks and posters and t-shirts and whatever else you may have promised people.
So this is sounding a little complicated to me, but I'm curious. How does one go about setting up a fundraising campaign?
Okay, well, I'm going to switch over to a Kickstarter page for one of my Kickstarters because it'll exemplify a few things, but I'll walk you through all of that. So hang on here and hopefully we're going to share the screen successfully. And we're going to go there and share, and hopefully that worked. This is the most recent Kickstarter I've done. And the first thing you're going to want to do if you're going to go onto Kickstarter is you're going to want to establish an account with Kickstarter. So you go to Kickstarter and you say that you create a password, you create an account. And one of the things that you're going to do if you're going to be a producer on Kickstarter, rather than somebody who just purchases or backs projects on Kickstarter, is you're going to have to link it to a bank account of some kind. And they have, financial security questions that they ask in connection with that, and they have to verify your bank account. And that could take a week or 10 days. So you don't want to wait until the absolute last second before you establish your Kickstarter account. But once you have a Kickstarter account, you can establish a project. And the thing about establishing a project is they'll give you a page in which you insert various information to create your Kickstarter page. And that doesn't go live immediately. So you can take some time to create it, proofread it. You can even send a link to it to a friend or two to ask them to look at it and see if they find any problems with it. And then you try to create a page that is going to be successful at drawing in backers. Now, I will say, if you've got a limited social media presence, Kickstarter may be a little difficult because one of the chief places that people advertise their Kickstarters is on social media like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. You can do it by emails. You can have friends who are more into social media than you are, can do it on their social media. But but it is slightly better if you've got a social media presence. And I will say that Kickstarters for anthologies, where you may have 10 or 12 or 20 authors who all have a social media presence, have a slightly greater chance of success because you've got 20 people who are promoting it to their social media contacts and not just one or two. But anyhow, if you go here, you'll have to say what your project is. In this case, I was releasing a new volume of my spy thriller series, and I was re-releasing the prior volume. The prior volume had been put out by a small press that went out of business. So I was going to do the second one on my own. I decided I wanted to have a consistent look for the covers. So I got new cover made for the first one, a cover made for the second one. I actually got a cover made for the third one in advance. That book will be coming out in a month or so. I'll probably do a Kickstarter for it. So you put your, the title of what you got, a little 2-sentence explanation, a graphic that shows what it is and hopefully grab some attention. And then you will create a campaign description. Now, I think it's very important if you're creating a Kickstarter that you have a video. You want a video that's 50 seconds to 1 minute and 30 seconds, nothing longer. Books aren't complicated. They don't take a lot of explanation. And I'm not going to play this one for you. If you want to see it, you can go to kickstarter.com and put in Bingle, and you'll find, I think out of the 8 things that pop up when you say Bingle, 3 of them are mine. You can look at my video if you want to see examples of videos. But you do something with a few pictures and a little bit of voiceover. You can do that for free on vimeo.com, V-I-M-E-O. But there are other services, and some people have those kinds of video creation capabilities on their computer without even using a free service. You create a short video that talks about your project, asks for people to back it, and then you have an explanation of what the project is, with an executive summary up top, a little bit of an explanation of what the plot of the book is, why you're doing a Kickstarter. In this case, I had 2 books, so I then went to an explanation of the first book and its cover, along with some reviews that I got for it, then an explanation of the second book and its cover. One of the things that you're going to do when you create a Kickstarter is you're going to say what your goal is in terms of number of dollars. And if you reach that goal, you get that funding minus the fees. And if you reach more than that goal, you get the excess minus the fees. If you don't make that goal, your Kickstarter project is unsuccessful. Nobody gets charged anything and you owe nothing. But there are ways to encourage people to keep supporting your project even after you've met your initial goal. And those are called stretch goals. What's a stretch goal? Well, it's a bonus that everybody or all backers above a certain amount will get if the project exceeds its goal by a certain amount. Now, why are those important? Well, once a project is successful, there's not much incentive for the people who have already bought or backed the project to promote it. They know they're going to get their copy of the book. But if there are stretch goals, if extra money is raised, they get extra stories or extra books or an extra feature like a hardback copy or interior illustrations or something like that, then they have an incentive to go tell their friends, hey, this is a great project. I backed it. You should too. And the stretch goals can then begin to multiply. And the value for any backer at any particular level becomes greater because they're getting additional stuff for free. So here I had stretch goals. I had a little story that I self-published on Amazon. My next stretch goal was a book that a friend of mine had a Kickstarter for and did herself. Because of the fact that authors like to promote, if you have friends who are authors, especially if they're familiar with Kickstarter, they may be willing to say, hey, if I'll be a stretch goal for your Kickstarter, and I will basically let you give away electronic copies of my book or my story for free to your backers, because then I'll introduce myself to a new group of customers. And so now for your backers, they get 2 books for what they paid for, plus a story. And this goes on and on.
Okay.
There's another novella that you could get. And then there's a memoir I did about my dad. And then it goes on, and I said I would put out the 3rd book if we reached a certain level and everybody would get it for free. Well, we didn't reach that level, so I'm not doing that book for free. I am doing that book, and this is the cover of it, but I'll have my own Kickstarter for it. And then you explain about the author. Kickstarter requires you to say something about the risks and challenges, which basically warns people if you've never done a Kickstarter before, you might not know what you're doing, or you might be dependent on the Chinese to create tools and dies, or dependent on, you know, shipping or postage rates internationally or whatever. This is pretty easy because the book was already done, copy edited, and basically could come out very quickly. So those are stretch goals, and those all go in your explanation of the campaign. And I know I'm rambling a bit here, but I am going to explain one other thing first, and that's how do you back a thing. So you'll see at the side, there's this little thing called support. So if you pledge $4, you would get an e-copy of book 1. If you pledge $6, you would get an e-copy of book 2. Maybe you already had book 1. Pledge $9, you get e-copies of both. So there's a little bargain if you buy both at once. One thing some people do on their support to encourage the Kickstarter to getting to a good start is they give lower prices for early birds, for the first 50 people or the first 100 people to do something, get $1 off the price. So here's early bird print copies. And then regular print copies are a bit more if you didn't get in on the early bird. Some people do those, by the way, by the number of backers. Some do it by time. If you subscribe in the first 2 days, you get a lower price. And then you can do other things that will get bids towards the project. So here's print copies of both thrillers. Here's a bulk purchase. If you're a store and you want to buy a bulk purchase, then you get a wholesale price, but you have to be a store to get that. Here's a mega pack where you can get not only these books, but my earlier books, Force Conversion and Frame Shop and Green Sword, and they're all autographed. Or I'll do run a reading group participation for you and give digital copies to up to half a dozen people in your book club. Or I'll critique a story of yours. Or Gene Raby, who was my copy editor and co-author on one book that I put out, will do a critique service for you. Or I'll write a story for your anthology. Or I'll run a role-playing game for your gaming group, because I was a big gamer and I've written a lot of gaming material. Or if you just want to be a patron of the arts and give me $1,000, well, I'll send you pretty much everything I've ever published. So there's different kinds of backing that you can have, and there's tactics. You can be spare on how many of those there are, or you can be complicated. Complicated scares off some people who aren't familiar with Kickstarter, but it does let you promote your other books, in ways that get you additional money without a lot of additional costs. It doesn't cost me any money to run a book club presentation. It doesn't cost me any money, it costs me a little bit of time to do a critique of somebody's short story. So those are the kinds of things that you can do in setting up a Kickstarter. Okay. That was a really long answer.
Oh, well, but very interesting and very informational. I think one question that most of our viewers are dying to know is, how much money can someone expect to raise through crowdfunding? And I don't know.
Let's see if we could, well, it really depends. I looked up beforehand, and maybe I'll see if I can switch over. Did that switch over pictures?
Yes.
Okay. So here are the fiction projects that have been on Kickstarter, sorted by the most funded. You'll see Brandon Sanderson, which is probably somebody you've heard about if you're into epic fantasy and that kind of stuff. He raised $6 million for a 10th anniversary leather-bound edition of his epic fantasy. It goes down fairly quickly from that because most people don't have the following that Brandon Sanderson does. But, you know, Cory Doctorow here did an audiobook. He raised $800,000. It falls off a little bit, but as you scroll down this, you're still in the tens of thousands of dollars for a lot of these things. So if you've got a big enough following, or the people who are participating in the Kickstarter have a big enough following, you can raise a fair amount of money. Now, I basically use it to launch my books as a marketing tool. I raise in the neighborhood of $2,000, a little less, a little bit more, depending on the project. Anthologies I've been in have been somewhat more successful. I had one anthology that I was in. It was kind of remarkable because the entire anthology was a reprint of something that had already been released about 2 years earlier. But they were doing interior illustrations. It looked real nice. The company was very enthusiastic. There were like 20 very well-connected authors on social media. And they released that book and raised $26,000 for that anthology. Now, even with 20 authors, that still means I'm getting paid $1,000+ for a short story I had already previously sold and was just being reprinted, which is a pretty good rate of return for a short story. That was an unusually successful anthology for a small press publisher, but you can do thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. The thing I will say is, if you look at publishing, and you can sort by other ways, you can look at the most recent projects, you will find publishing project after publishing project after publishing project where nobody backed at all. Oh. They raised $0. It's like, if you are raising $0 on a Kickstarter project, you did not properly plan your project. That means not a single friend backed you for $1, and not a single person was interested in the graphic that you showed. Not a single person was convinced by your text or your video, and your topic was of no interest whatsoever to people who just peruse Kickstarter. There are people who regularly peruse Kickstarter projects that are strangers to you, and they're just looking for interesting things. And sometimes they want the book and story, and sometimes they'll just say, you know what, that's cool. I'm going to give them $2 and not even ask for a copy of the book. A lot of Kickstarters have what they call the tip jar, or the backer for nothing or whatever, where it's like, give us $1, give us $5 just to show that you love us and you love Kickstarter and you love genre fiction or independent authors or whatever. If you get nobody from that group, if you're at $0, you did not plan your Kickstarter well. And there are dozens and dozens of people who plan their Kickstarter projects well.
Good. Well, we're running out of time, but I do want to give you an opportunity to answer one last question, and that is, do you have any suggestions for authors who might be considering crowdfunding beyond what you've shared with us already?
Yes. Well, first of all, you should have a social media presence. If you don't have a Facebook page and a web page, you should get one. Just to show you, that's what my web page looks like.
Okay.
And I've got not only a resume, but I've got videos and other things that I've done. You want something that people can find out about you as a writer. And that's a base start. But the second thing is, you should connect with other authors, and you should consider, you should look at their Kickstarters, and you should consider backing them. One of the things that I found, especially since I've been an author in a lot of anthologies that have been kickstarted, is that those other authors have their own Kickstarters too. And one of the things that you can do as somebody who has put out a Kickstarter project is you can always update your project, and it will send an automatic email to everybody who backed your project. So I've had 3 projects. When I do my next Kickstarter, every single person who backed my previous Kickstarters will get an email from Kickstarter that says, hey, Don's got a new project, you want to back it. But the thing is if you have a lot of friends who do that too, they can do an update on their Kickstarter project. So, hey, my friend Don Bingle's got a new Kickstarter. You may remember him because he had a story in this anthology or whatever. And so you can create a lot of contacts to tell about your Kickstarter project if you are nice and share Kickstarters from other people on your social media network. And authors, especially independent authors, are very supportive of one another. So if you are actually being friendly and engage with them and talk to them and don't just say, hey, I did a Kickstarter, will you back it? You will get a lot of goodwill from other independent authors. Follow them on Facebook, like some of their comments, share some of their promos, and they will do the same back.
Great. Donna, thank you so much. This has been very informational for us. Many of our members are self-published, and I know they're looking for marketing ideas. So this is going to be a great way to get them looking at some unique opportunities to get their book out there in front of people. For further information on writing or on the Hawaii Writers Guild, people can go to www.hawaiiwritersguild.com. Let me say that again, www.hawaiiwritersguild.com and write on.
All righty.
Thank you.
I'm happy also if anybody wants to contact me through my website for specific questions, happy to share.
You better be careful what you ask for. Thank you.
All righty. Take care, Diane. Thanks.